Shua Tov, everyone. Welcome to week number 93 in our Tillis Tells Stories for Saturday Night WhatsApp group. I adapted this story from a book, but I no longer remember which book. I'm sorry about that. I titled it Abraham and Sarah Revisited. Rabbi Abraham Bornstein, born in 1839, was a descendant of the 17th century Torah giants, the Ramah and the Shach. In 1883, he, already long regarded as a leading authority in Jewish law, he became the first Sakachova Rebbe, the spiritual master of thousands of Chassidim. He was often referred to as the Avnei Nezer, after the title of his 7-volume monumental work on Jewish law. Even as a child before Bar Mitzvah, the Avnei Nezer was recognized as a Torah genius. Once he was sitting and learning Torah in the Beis Medrash study hall when a crowd of crying Jews came in. The crowd began to tearfully recite psalms and pray for the healing of a terribly sick Jew whose end was near. Perhaps heaven would have mercy. Their cries and loud prayers disturbed the young Avnei Nezer's learning. Listen, he told them, if you promise to pray quietly and not disturb my study, I in turn will promise you that he will recover. The crowd heeded the young Torah scholar, and amazingly, the dying man recovered. Later in life, the Sakachova would often say, if people only realized the good I could accomplish for them through my Torah study, no one would ever dare cross my threshold again to ask for a blessing. The great Divrei Chaim of Sanz tested the young genius in 1852 as a possible husband for his daughter. Afterwards, he remarked, even though he learns like the Noda B'Yehuda, the remarkable 18th century Torah scholar, Rabbi Yehezkel Landau, even though he learns like the Noda B'Yehuda, I cannot take him as a chatan for my daughter. He's too sharp for me. And it's hard to imagine anybody being too sharper than the Divrei Chaim himself. Reuven Ansh of Jerusalem wrote to me that he heard why the sons of Rav said he was too sharp for them. It was normal practice for the father-in-law of a Kala to test the prospective son-in-law in Torah knowledge. Although the Avnei Nezer answered the question sufficiently, the sons of Rav decided he would like to give him an additional test. The Avnei Nezer responded, if so, I would also like to test the Rav. Everyone present was astounded at his nervy request. He explained himself to the Divrei Chaim as follows. In truth, just as the prospective son-in-law may test the prospective In truth, just as the prospective father-in-law may test the prospective son-in-law, so too the prospective son-in-law should also have the right to test the prospective father-in-law. However, it is accepted that this is not necessary, since the prospective son-in-law can rely on the test that the father-in-law of his prospective father-in-law already gave to him before his own shidduch. Here, though, he said to the sons of Rebbe, since you do not want to rely on my first test, then I also do not have to rely on the first test you were given by your father-in-law, and therefore I have the right to test you also. That's why the sons of Rebbe said the Avnei Nezer was too sharp for him. Instead, the equally famous Rebbe of Kotsk took the prodigy for a son-in-law when he was a mere 13 years old. When they stood under the chuppah, the wedding canopy, the Kotzer was heard saying, may it be your will, God Almighty, that his sick, weak body be able to hold such a great genius mind. Not long after they were married, though, the Kotzker's daughter, the Avnei Nezer's wife, Sarah, burst into her father's home, crying uncontrollably. Amid sobs, she explained that her young husband had contracted pneumonia and was coughing up blood. No need to worry, her father, the Kotzker Rebbe, told her. He will live a long life. He is named Abraham, and you are Sarah, and the verse is, Abraham and Sarah were old, coming along in days. Indeed, the blessing was fulfilled. The Avnei Nezer's wife lived until age 72, which in those days, and in Pirkei Avos, is considered old. Soon thereafter, the widower grew sick and weak. He realized that the verse that his father-in-law had blessed him with had tied him to Sarah's lifespan. Now that hers had ended, his blessing would soon be up as well. When the Imrei Emes, the Rebbe of Gur, Rabbi Avram Mordechai Alta, came to console him on his wife's passing, the Sokotrava related to him the above story of his father-in-law's blessings and the explanation of how he realized that now his end was near as well. On the last day of his life, the 11th of Adar Rishon, which was today, Shabbat, he arose early. His son and family were at his bedside. His condition had rapidly deteriorated since his wife's passing, and they saw he was breathing his last. He motioned them to help him sit up, whereupon he prepared and purified himself and donned his tefillin for the final time. As he prayed the silent Amidah prayer, he grew weaker. Finally, when he reached the blessing of Makabetz Nidchei Amo Yisrael, who gathers the exiles of the Jewish nation, he motioned for them to remove his tefillin. A light of peace and tranquility shone from him as he recited this blessing, and he passed away with a heavenly kiss, gently and smoothly. He was succeeded by his only son, Rabbi Shmuel, author of Shem Shmuel.